Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo-Sanders, and we're so happy that you could join us today. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Portland, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box. And to support our authors, we host the Poetry Box Live on the second Saturday of each month. We publish about 30 poetry books per year, plus our annual journal, The Poeming Pigeon. And for today's show, we have an eclectic mix of poets who will be reading from their forthcoming books. Today's featured poets include Beth Bonus from here in Portland, Oregon, Sam Love, who will be reading from North Carolina, and Mimi Gurman, who's also joining us from Portland, Oregon. So let's get started with our first featured reader. Beth Bonus is the author of Transition Thunderstorms, which was a finalist in the Poetry Box Chapbook Prize for 2021. Beth grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the eldest of 6 girls. She moved to the Pacific Northwest with her computer science degree and her husband, where they raised 3 daughters. She fell in love with the beach and enjoyed climbing Mount Hood once. After decades working in product development and marketing and one too many acquisitions, she said goodbye to high-tech corporate culture and began to write. Her poems have appeared in the Timberline Review, Type House, and Fridays on the Boulevard. 2 of her short film scripts made it to the Willamette Writers Film Lab quarterfinals. She is currently working on a post-stroke memoir about saving a 100-year-old mansion with her husband, and a psychological thriller screenplay about subconscious personalities. She lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and likes to write early in the morning before she wakes up too much. Please welcome Beth Bonus.
There we go. So I just want to say thank you, Shawn, for all the support that you've had with having this chapbook come out. I can't imagine a better partner in having my first chapbook come out. So thank you for that. And for the Zoom sessions, as you said, being able to have poets from all over the country and family and friends coming in from all over the country and around the world. And even though they've been told that they'll get a recording, you know, and not stay up too late. And I'm talking to Fernando if he's on from Germany. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank Annie Lightheart. She was the judge for the chapbook contest this year. And she had a competing kid event, but was going to try to pop in. So if Annie comes in, that'd be great. I'd also like to thank my 3 blurbers, Roxanne and Anne and Sue. When I got your reviews in my email box, I was so touched by the words that you had in looking over my work. So I want to thank them. I want to thank family and friend from all over the country and spilling out to across the world who will see this either live or afterwards. It's always great to have that support, both during the strokes that I had, as well as with the writing that I've been doing on and off for years. And it's nice to see it finally coming to fruition. So thank you for your support. Finally, to my husband, Jeff, who's someplace upstairs, so our audio doesn't mix in, and our 3 daughters, Kayla, Rachel, and Amanda. You guys were my anchor during my thunderstorms in my brain during the strokes, and this chapbook is dedicated to you. So to set the stage, we need to go back to 2007. There was a 2 or 3 week period that I had recurring strokes. So it wasn't just one, they just kept coming back, and it took a while to figure out what was happening. And for decades now, I have downplayed my strokes. It's like it was just something I did. You get over it, life goes on. And strokes happen to old people, your grandparents, and I wasn't even 50 yet. It happened a couple of weeks before my 50th birthday. And in the course of that denial that my youngest reminded me of not too long ago, I wasn't allowing, or I wasn't accepting, embracing that part of those experiences that really are part of what makes me. And the resilience and the determination that I had didn't just come from me. It came from, I inherited it. It was from my mom and my grandmother specifically. So this is a shout out to my mom whenever she listens to the Zoom. If there had been younger stroke survivor stories, maybe I wouldn't have been quite so protective. I didn't want anybody to see me when I couldn't walk or talk or type or put my eye makeup on, which became a goal, which sounds silly, but it was a big deal in the hospital when the doc came in, and I was all excited. He's like, what? And I said, well, I got my eye makeup on, so he's like, okay. So simple things like that weren't so simple for a period of time. And it took me about 10 years to actually write about the strokes. I journaled when I could start longhand writing again, but it took me about 10 years to actually think back to all the time when I had the strokes and actually capture it. And poetry was perfect because of the fragments that go on in your brain during the stroke time. It was a great container for it. So this chapbook came up, and I had done, I'd been submitting poems, but the chapbook concept intrigued me, and often they're pre-themed. The contests are pre-themed, but this one was up to the poet to decide. And so I thought, I've got all these poems, there's got to be some theme in there. And when I found a really, really long one that was written about the morning of Thanksgiving when I was in the hospital, I thought, it's going to be about the strokes. So you're trying to downplay the strokes, but you're going to write a chapbook about the strokes, so you're going to have to talk about them now. And so I divided that one up into 8 different poems, and then would intersperse other poems in between them. So that's how kind of the story of the poems. And the Thunderstorm title harkens back to my childhood in the Midwest. And I love thunderstorms still to this day. And we don't have the same kind of thunderstorms in Portland that we did back in Wisconsin. But during the summer, you'd watch the dark blue clouds come in, and the rain would come in sheets. And as kids, you'd just run out there in the summertime and you'd get soaked, and you'd come in, your teeth would be chattering. And my mom used to refer to it, it's like, oh, you're soaked to the bone. And so these strokes are one of my life events that soaked me to the bone. And so that's where the title came from. So before I read the poem, what I'm going to ask each of you to do is, if you can think to a time when you couldn't get the right words out. Might have been when you were angry at somebody, when you were frustrated, when you were really worried and didn't want to say the wrong thing. But just think of what that felt like to know what you wanted to say, but not be able to get the words out. And that's what it was like during the 3 or 4 weeks, and for many months after, in terms of getting the right words out. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Wrong Word Dinner. And it wasn't the first stroke, but it was the first batch of strokes. And my husband used to refer to evil snowflakes, and there'd be this sparkling artifact that would be off in my peripheral vision. There wouldn't be any pain, there'd be a little pressure, but it was definitely a warning that another stroke was coming. It was just my brain wasn't getting enough blood. And so first one I had was, I'm getting my hair done, so I'm looking at myself in the mirror across from getting my hair done, and I'm telling some story about my mom in Rome and frozen peas in the Vatican, and Mary is like agitated, and I'm like, I'm trying to tell you a story and you're interrupting me. And then I look in the mirror and my lips aren't moving, and I'm thinking, this is really weird. Mary wanted to call 911, and I'm shaking my head, no. It was the last appointment of the day, and I don't know, 5 minutes later, if Mary's on, she can put in the chat room how long she thinks it was. I walked around the corner to meet up with my husband, Jeff, and a couple of our kids. Didn't say anything. Finished dinner and we split up. So he told me to drive, the youngest home. I didn't say anything, drove her home. Shouldn't have done that. Got home, still didn't say anything. Kids went up to do their homework, and I found Jeff and said, I have something I got to tell you. So needless to say, called Kaiser, had to promise not to drive myself to the hospital. And I started my frequent flyer miles at being in and out of the hospital for those 3 weeks. So this is from one of the earlier strokes. Wrong word dinner. Robe of white wraps around my recovering body. My husband and daughter's dinner table chatter surrounds me. Leftovers warm in the microwave. Everyone's smiling. Today's been a better day. Blood pressure's holding. Read a bit of a book. Sleep's been okay. Longer concentration than yesterday. Journaled with less frustration. Yet my O's and E's and A's still collapse. Deflated helium balloons in my cursive. The girls chatter on about their day, peppered with questions from Dad. My private ping pong game. Keep up with their conversations. Lean in for a question. My lips part. By the time a thought is firm, the girls are off to their next topic. My lips close, forced smile intact. No reason to let them know I'm having trouble keeping up. Though they sense it. When they ask me a question, their pace slows. Beep. Husband chair scrapes and squeals on the floor. As he starts to rise, I pop up before he does, wrapping my white robe sash tighter. The microwave door swings open. Words in my head stand in line, ready for their turn. Only they get all mixed up when they come out, like someone at camp stopping abruptly and entire lines of words falling over each other. Middle daughter points to an apple. I say, orange? The word apple mute the back of my brain in the shadows. Her buddy Orange answers on Apple's behalf. Youngest daughter points to her water glass. I say, chair? My smile collapses, joined by their smiles weakening. Not again. No evil snowflakes in the peripheral vision this time. No hand claw, only wrong words. Hunger disappears, adrenaline fills my belly, tears well up. Don't want the girls to see me like this. Stop talking, then the wrong words won't come out. Slip away into the living room, lights off. Laughter from moments earlier disintegrates into murmurs. Too much excitement. Stay still for a bit. Doctor's orders, meds and rest. The house is quiet, meds and rest. Tears fall into my white robe, invisible. I don't stop them until I hear footsteps. My youngest crouches down, her hands on my knees, voice gentle. Mama, you know you have to go back to the hospital, don't you? Her 15-year eyes searching for recognition in my almost 50-year ones. When did our roles reverse? I shake my head yes, upstairs to change, with all my wrong words mashing around in my head, unable to get out in the right order. Thank you. Thank you. The next one I'm going to read, when I talk about life events soaking you to the bone, this is one that I didn't realize soaked me to the bone at the time. My little sister died when she was 10, she was 3 and I was 10. And so this poem was written about the same time as I did the stroke poems. And it's about the night she died. I peer through the upstairs railing, our front door open. Mom stands in her puffy white robe in the middle of the night. Dad is next to her, his back to me. He holds my little sister's body, her 3-year-old head nestled in his left elbow. A lace bonnet with blonde curls scotch taped inside. Her legs to his right, still. In the driveway, a police car idles, lights off. An officer escorts my father, clutching her tiny frame, into the car. Dad slips into the back seat, cradling my sister, adjusting her bonnet. The squad door closes. We watch them drive away, Mom and I. She closes the front door, cutting off cold air replacing the warmth of my little sister. Thank you. This next one is one of the 8 that I had divided and then had inserted other poems like the one I just read. And so this will give a flavor. There are a bunch of these poems that are very visual, so you won't be able to see it, but if you get the chapbook, you'll be able to see it. So this one is, again, this was the morning of Thanksgiving, one of my many times in the hospital. And so it's when I woke up in the hospital. Thanksgiving with a side of no thank you, number 4. I spot people outside my door through the little window. Coffee mixed with antiseptic soap passes. A nurse shoulders the door open. You're awake. Good morning. Left arm doesn't work. Left arm doesn't work. She can't hear me. Tears well up in my eyes. Don't cry. Don't cry. You okay, honey? I shrug my shoulders. She checks the BP reading. Let's try again. Must be high. You okay? I shake my head no. Want me to call somebody? Yes, I want you to call Jeff, but he just got a good night's sleep finally. I don't want to wake him up, and I don't want to scare him. She can't hear me. I shake my head yes. She slips out the door faster than she eased in. Once the door closes, tears fall. Sunshine, crimson, and coral peep through the partially open window slats, swaying when the heat is on. It was daylight most of the night inside my room, with the backlit mood lighting behind my bed, out of reach to turn off. Only it wouldn't, because like generator lighting, it's always on. Wouldn't want any of the doctors or nurses to trip when they didn't tiptoe into my room to check on me during the night. Be nice, they're trying to figure out what's going on with you, okay? Thank you. This last poem was actually the first poem I had published after I left corporate. And for a long time, I've been working on decades. I've been working on a screenplay. And so at some point I said to myself, I'm going to reward myself when the screenplay is optioned and I'm going to get my nose pierced. Well, then I had my strokes and I said, if you want to get your nose pierced, get your nose pierced. And so I ended up being published then after I submitted the poem. And so publishing and piercing happened, but in a different order than I expected. So this one's called Nose Piercing. Fingers shake ever so slightly beneath a cupped hand resting on my lap. Smile thoughts forced over a cliff by inside cheering hooligans, ready for initiation of a lifetime undercover member exposed. It's time. Inked Brooklyn expat, disarming chatter, a purposeful distraction, welcomed. Point by point prelude. Deep, nervous, inhale. Exhale, quick crunch through cartilage. Tears stream. A delayed jolt of adrenaline. Arm crossed hooligans watching high-five each other. Nostril twitches. A tiny diamond sparkles. Thank you. And the last thing I'd like to offer as a tip for people, anybody who knows somebody who's had a stroke or has had some life event, get them a really nice journal and a pen and encourage them to write about what they're going through. It's not that they're going to do anything with it, but it's amazing how the thought echoes that translate through the decades. You think, remember how you felt or what happened, but you really don't. And so having a journal where it's documented, whether your longhand looks good or not, is something that's really helpful. So that's just my tip to you. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Beth, for sharing your story. I didn't realize if it was just one stroke, or I didn't realize that you had so many, and that was such a long recovery. But you certainly gave us all something to think about. And I wanted to tell you that I grew up in the Midwest and in St. Louis. And so I've always had this fascination and fondness for thunderstorms as well. And I thought I really liked the way that you used that as a metaphor for the suddenness, the shock of it, like, as you said, soaking you to the bone. I thought it was just the perfect metaphor for the way you weave these experiences together.
Thank you.
And the Thanksgiving poems are a real treat. There was one, I think it's number 6, and you describe how the gatekeeper in charge of releasing the words out of your mouth must be new and still needs more on-the-job training or something. And I just thought that was a great way to express that. And for such a serious topic, your kind of dark humor that kind of runs through the whole book and sharing your vulnerability really make this quite an enjoyable collection to read. So thank you so much for sharing with us again today. Okay, our next featured poet is Sam Love, who is the author of a new eco-poetry collection, Earth Resonance, Poems for a Viable Future. In 1970, Sam Love worked on the national staff of the first Earth Day. He was a founding editor of the Successors Group's magazine, Environmental Action, and served as coordinator of the organization, which worked to transform the momentum created by Earth Day into legislative change. Over the years, he published numerous articles in magazines, including the Washingtonian and the Smithsonian. After working as an environmental advocate, Sam made a living creating film and video images. With so much internet visual clutter, he decided to transition to poetry, where readers can make the movie in their heads. Sam now lives in New Bern, North Carolina. His poetry has appeared in Slippery Elm, Voices on the Wind, The Lyricist, Flying South, and other publications. Eno, published by Duke University, published 6 of his environmental poems, and 4 were featured on Poetry in Plain Sight, a series of posters exhibited throughout North Carolina. His self-published illustrated children's book, My Little Plastic Bag, has won numerous awards, including a Nautilus Book Award. Please welcome Sam Love.
Shawn, thank you so much. Is it switching to me? I can't tell. Oh, good. So the title of my book is Earth Resonance, Poems for a Viable Future. And this came really from COVID, because I thought COVID had captured my muse and I wasn't as productive writing poetry. So I decided to go through the last 10 years of poems that I had scattered over the internet, in print, other places, posters, and pull together my environmental poetry into one collection. And I appreciate Shawn accepting it. And she did a beautiful cover of a conch shell, and I'm going to explain that. So resonance in nature is a small vibration at the right frequency that creates a larger vibration. For example, if the air forced inside the conch shell begins to vibrate through the spiral chamber, a resonance is created, and the result is a louder volume. So let the messages of poets giving voice to our survival instinct expand to pave the way to a viable future. Here's one of the poems from the collection, and it's a full-length collection, not a chapbook, so I'm excited about that. I sometimes have a vision that an archaeologist will go through a landfill one day and find a printed version of my book. And if it's on the internet, that would never happen. So we'll see. Awakening. No one hears the solar rays as greenhouse gases trap heat to toast the planet, until the tears of Mother Earth pelt down as torrential rains, until glaciers crack under the Arctic's eternal summer, until sea-warmed hurricanes undercut oceanside foundations, until verdant forests crackle with drought-nourished fires. until habitats disappear and species cry out for a new home. May this dystopian symphony awaken us from our suicidal slumber. And here's another poem. It's called Our Legacy. As obsolescence rules the market, permanence becomes a museum exhibit. Native American potters must be smiling, knowing their earthen art will outlast our digital legacy. Still, our legacy is secure in mounds of disposables no one can repair and nature cannot degrade. Our legacy is archived in plastic bits and chemicals polluting the earth's waters. Now, some of the poems really follow a couple of themes, and I view this as something that can be used for awareness and education. One is, I think we don't understand where things come from and everything that goes into making it, and we don't understand where it goes. And so some of these poems help us understand that. Blueberry Morning. It's a January frost-free miracle in my North Carolina supermarket, where it's a 2-for-1 blueberry sale, so I add them to my shopping cart. Secure from the freaky outside cold, the Chilean bluettes look perfectly cozy in their crystal clear plastic containers. They look so comfy. I wonder if they can still dream of summer in South America. As I eat my morning oatmeal, I ponder the adventure stories of this well-traveled fruit. Could it tell me about the toxic sprays that made it picture perfect? Was it picked by a shaker machine or by campesinos breaking their backs? How was its 4,136-mile plane trip from the Chilean farm to Florida? Did it enjoy its 869-mile truck trip up the interstate? How many miles per gallon does a Chilean blueberry get? Sometime this summer, local pick-your-own blueberries will ripen on nearby vines, and they can take a shortcut across the river to my morning bowl. Then breakfast will be more enjoyable when my mind doesn't have to digest so many perplexing questions. Okay, thank you. This poem led to the creation of my children's book, My Little Plastic Bag, that it's an illustrated book that explains what happens when a little girl throws a plastic bag out of a car window and how it moves through the ecosystem. The downstream loop. Sparkling in the sunlight, the little plastic bag sails from the mindless driver's hand to drift among roadside weeds. No one bothers to retrieve it. And on counting mowing day, whirring blades cut a grass swath, shredding the bag into gossamer slivers. The next thunderstruck downpour carries the shreds through the watershed to the larger boiling stream, to the tidal marsh, to the Atlantic Ocean. The Gulf Stream's sun and waves pulverize the slivers into tiny bits, creating a culinary delicacy for large schools of filter feeders. Small fish that mistake plastic globules for aquatic eggs and plankton. Larger fish like sea trout and tuna cut a swath through the schools and devour the tiny fish, concentrating the petrochemicals up the food chain. For dinner, we purchase the wild-caught tuna, let the fishmonger fillet the toxic-laden flesh, pack it in ice, and store it in a new virgin plastic bag a bag that completes the ecological cycle. Thank you. And so here's another one. Thanks, Shawn. Here's another one that sort of imagines what's happening to bacteria. And actually, I wish I'd talked about viruses since that's been all the news lately, but a similar thing is happening with bacteria. The last laugh. Imagine the sex life of bacteria. No cumbersome courting for a mate. Just every 10 minutes, they divide their single cell into 2, then double into 4. As masters of rapid adaptation, they flourish in hellish places, acidic hot springs, barren soil, brackish water, radioactive waste, and the human gut. In our body, we have 10 times more bacteria than cells. Probiotics are good for you, and germs are the bad ones. Plain soap could do the job, but we use antibacterials to cleanse counters, sterilize food, and sanitize the baby's butt. They only kill 99%, leaving you to wonder if the 1% are planning a counterattack with super resistant germs. If bacteria could do a belly laugh, they'd be doubling over because the real joke is on us, humans who think we ruled the earth. Okay, thank you on that one. Now, some of the poems are written from the perspective of the natural world. Here's one written from the perspective of a honeybee. Sayonara, humans. To make a dab of honey, I have to sample nectar from 100 flowers, and each pound requires visiting millions of plants. Now, as our colonies collapse from pesticides, parasites, and climate change, you will miss us when we are gone. We pollinate 1/3 of your food. So if you like your fruits, vegetables, almonds, apples, strawberries, blueberries, potatoes, peppers, and pears, get ready to kiss them goodbye. Sayonara, humans. Eating just corn and soybeans is going to get really boring. Okay, here's another one that sort of helps to change our image of some of the things we see on a regular basis now, unfortunately. Urban tumbleweeds, like a Western tumbleweed, a synthetic urban tumbleweed, bounces across a highway, revealing orange splashes of sunlight shimmering through the plastic bag. Gyrating in wind-driven swirls, the bag dances across the road until it catches on the curb, deflates and waits for the next rainstorm to wash it down the storm drain. There it floats out of sight until surfacing in the river to join other plastic detritus destined to become the legacy of our so-called civilization. And now here's one. Thank you for the hand waves and all that. That's replacing when the beatniks, I guess, used to snap their fingers. I'm arthritic now, so I can't get any snap out of my fingers, so I wouldn't have been a good beatnik. Okay, lightning bug apology. Dear lightning bugs, on behalf of all of those who are not aware you face extinction, I would like to apologize. As you disappear along with the bees, amphibians, and monarch butterflies, I apologize for our attempts to reorder nature through habitat loss, toxic chemicals, and light pollution. I apologize for the night lighting of street lamps and headlights that disrupt the few weeks your light blinks to attract a mate. What a pity. Many will never know the joy of watching your fireworks outshine the stars. And I only have a couple of more. Now, I read a lot of articles, scientific articles, and this, some of them concern me, and people don't seem that alarmed about them. So This one deals with what's happening to male sperm. I think I've coined a new term here, spermageddon. Under the microscope, tadpole-like human sperm now swim in circles instead of rushing upstream to impregnate their target. As viable sperm counts fall and more sperm swim erratically, healthy swimmers may soon become an endangered species. To fight this impending spermageddon, men should be marching on Washington to confront corporate lobbyists. It's not us, says the pesticide industry. It's not us, says the chemical industry. It's not us, says the plastics industry. Collectively, these corporate hacks point to the real villain, the dreaded vegans stuffing themselves with soy products that disrupt the endocrine system. And I have two more and then we'll wrap it up. So there are people all over the planet that are fighting for the integrity of their ecosystem. And there's one group that's actually following the number of them that are being murdered by, loggers and drug dealers and others. And this is a poem that celebrates two of those guardians. Monarch's Lament, a tribute to Homero Gomez Gonzalez and Raul Hernandez Romero, Mexican monarch guardians murdered in 2020. As the summer's fourth generation, our chrysalis cocoons now hatch to prepare for our southern migration to our ancestral forest. As the days shorten, our antenna sense the changes and we rise skyward in search of a southern current to boost our flight. With only a few rest stops, we follow rivers and mountains thousands of miles south to a Mexican mountain forest. As our cloud-like masses pass over natives, they worship us as the spirits of returning warriors. Our genetic imprint guides us to the trees where our ancestors hatched. Arriving by November's Day of the Dead, we find many of our fir trees having been cut, leaving us a barren wasteland. And our brave guardians, led by Homero Gomez and Raul Hernandez, gave their lives fighting the illegal loggers. After hibernating, rising temperatures signal it's time to fly north to breed and create another generation. Before taking wing, some of us joined mourners inside a service honoring Homero Gomez Gonzalez, one of our guardians. After we flutter inside the chapel, we start our journey north and wonder who will guard our forest guardians. And I keep checking, and so far no one has been arrested for murdering these two brave men. Now here's my final poem, which is an upbeat one. Each day, crisis, extinction, shortage, catastrophe, words so overwhelming we throw up our hands and shout, what's the use? I'm only one of 7.6 billion consuming the Earth's resources, polluting the environment, carbonizing the atmosphere. Building a habitable future requires that each day we undertake one rebellious act. Refuse a plastic item, plant a tree, walk or bike, conserve water, turn off a light, lower the thermostat, support peace, or create your own dissent. One little act each day, 7.6 billion mouths could make a big change. Okay, thank you so much. And I hope you'll consider buying this book so Shawn will know how many to print.
Thank you, Sam. I have to say that one of the things I really enjoyed about the poems in this book is that it really elicits quite a variety of emotions as you read the different sections. I mean, at one point I was laughing, another point I was sad, I felt guilty, I was mad, but throughout all of it, I was able to find hope. And it really, the poem that you read at the end there each day is one of those poems that really kind of gives you a hopeful feeling, because we do throw up our hands at all the headlines and we go, well, it's too late. What are we going to do? And how could I make a difference? And I think just thinking about all these little small things that we can each do individually and the impact that it can have collectively if we all commit to it is a very hopeful thing. And so I really want to thank you for writing this and thank you for sharing these poems with us today.
And thank you. And I just think we're oblivious to what we're actually doing. And, I think awareness is a critical thing to work on.
Absolutely. And sometimes I think we choose to ignore things when they make us uncomfortable, or it's something that we don't want to do, but it's time to get woke, as they say. So thank you, Sam. Our final poet is Mimi Gurman, who is the author of Beneath the Gravel Weight of Stars, which was also a finalist in the Poetry Chapbook Prize for 2021. Mimi Gurman is a poet, an activist, an organizer, and an advocate and co-founder of Jason Barnes Landing, a houseless community and transitional village in St. John's in Portland. She is also the co-founder of the People's Housing Project based in Portland, and her poems have been published in The Hopper, The Mantle, Three Line Poetry, New Verse News, and recorded and archived as testimony in the Portland City Council sessions from 2017 to 2020. Mimi divides her time between living in the remote wilderness of Steens Mountain and Portland, Oregon. Please welcome Mimi Gurman.
Thanks, Shawn. I noticed that there are generations of my life among the guests in this Zoom. There are people here who I've known since I was 15. There are people from the middle generation of my life and from this very latter generation of my life in Portland. And I want to acknowledge that Steve Kimes is here, and Steve is somebody who has helped me become who I am with my work with houseless people. He paved the way here for my knowledge and many people's knowledge with how we can take land back and use it with the people who are currently occupying it, who have no homes. And these poems are for those people. And I decided today that I'm going to start with the dedication in the book, because I always want to acknowledge that these are the people who make my heart swell and show me what is real when I can't find the light. So this is the dedication. When the wood is too wet to burn, I will feed you melons and the songs of birds. To all my brothers and sisters trying to survive on the streets in St. John's, Oregon, thank you for sharing your lives with me, your incredible courage and your love. May you survive another night. I love you with all my heart. These poems are for you. This first poem, I have to say, was written at a time when we were having meteor showers. And I'm fascinated by science. I'm fascinated by what happens in the whole planetary system out there. So there are words in here that are taken from the names of meteor showers. So if you don't know what I'm saying, it's a meteor shower name. The other side of the coffee shop window. His back sags against the crush of crescent moon. Across the shatter, beneath the gravel weight of stars, the fisted arms of God pleat to his back, shoving him forward into the sidewalk cracks. Even the wheels of his cart are sullen, bent from the handling and the crash of cosmic debris. the bulldoze of shade across the seep, the concrete line, the drunken dodge of burning snowballs, the head limp, the turnaways. Ursids whisper in the door jamb. Over on 12th and Johnson, Perseid hovels at the tracks. Lyrids stoke a paper fire. Is it a star gown dance or the survival of lambs roasting round the spit where wrinkles and jowls grow from no surprises? The rise, the fall, shallow waters or high tide, his feet are always wet. So again, these are all poems that are images that I see on the street. Most of these come from things I've witnessed, sometimes close up and sometimes from afar. This poem is called Despite. The thorn of winter's buds sprout the harp strings of spring. Beneath the wisps of the bending branch, tent people murmur, huddle round the candle fire, the sweet honeysuckled vine. It is 4 a.m. Dark tendrils retract. Forsythia yawns. Remnants of a leaf tuck into mud. The pink tutu clings to the receding wing of night. Bluebird shuffles on the perch, the sheer ghost of morning. This is about a very close friend of mine who lives on the street. I have a few in here about him. This is called North Fessenden. He wears the worn kilter and the right hand lean of the weight of a man. Torso bends heavy on his cane, waiting for a bus. He turns a page in the cracks of the sidewalk. Looks like Burroughs, but I call him St. John. The necktie of hustle smears the greasy air. Potholes breed poets in these parts, stammering like starlings. And he is syntax framed. This is the garden, he's wild chard. City workers paint the lines. Kicked up stones crack the windshields of the parishioners of the Church of Daylight Savings, where sun seeps into cracks and the doors are always locked. I think that one of the things that I noticed in writing these, in the beginning of my time writing these poems, was that, first of all, people don't see houseless people because, like we were just saying, we don't want to see the things that make us either upset or just wreck our day. And so I recognized early on that these bring, for me, visibility to all of those who are invisible. And in doing so, I see such beauty and such irony and tragedy and sorrow, but I also see love in the weirdest places. And I wish for all of you, I wish for everyone that you could see that too. So I try with these, to present that and give that to you, because I believe in loving more and loving harder. This poem is called Afflicted. She held her breath as if she was holding God. When she could no longer stand it, when her eyes bulged like a blowfish on a hook, she exhaled and God let go of her. Sometimes she waited for angels to appear in the silence, not knowing that the silence was an angel appearing. The doctors said she was afflicted because she could not shut her eyes. She dreamed she never slept, which wasn't a dream. She was the colors of all things, and all things were she. In the early morning hour, she would lay on the ground, feeling the moon tied tightly to her belly. She was its rock tied to a tree. When the ground swayed, she laughed on her swing. As the moon exhaled, she tucked in the season's corners. She collected leaves and sometimes dust. She walked the shimmering trail of scales, tiptoeing the jangled light. She rubbed her skin in luminescent sand to feel whole, dipping her tilt into the lost lake. She wasn't certain of the footings, but she knew the notes of wind. Yesterday, she met a young man who was high on living. He told her, no matter what, there is beauty. She thought he looked like a spirit. A truck blew its horn, startling her back into the stark. She inhaled. One of the things I try to do with these poems in making them visible in order to help make invisible people visible is I do what I guess I call guerrilla art, and I make these huge. I turn these poems into 7-foot high pieces of paper and then glue them onto buildings that are vacant or bus stops or walls where houseless people live, and try to bring what goes on for houseless people to the community. And it's another way to, first of all, get poetry out there, right? And also bring some visibility to this issue. This happened. This is called Noon in the Park. This is about another friend of mine. He dragged in his hand a 3-legged chair, visible only to him. It was made of oak, or was it maple? The faded yellow paint was chipping and one leg had fallen off. He found it this way on the path. Slowly, like a tattered paper crane opening, he bent the tall sky beneath his thin body to sit on the invisible chair. He wobbled for balance. Crows spread out beside him to hold on for the steady. The squirrels came by to see the scene. The man on the invisible chair stood up, pushed the chair over and yelled, "All I want is to have a shower." He paused, "And to clean my balls." He stood on one foot, his other leg shaking like a crooked cane at the wind and the squirrels and at the sky. But then he bowed a deep, quiet bow, humbling himself to the wet, muddy ground, and sat down once more on his chair made of air. Shawn, I'm noticing the time. Is it okay to read more? It's okay? This one, okay, this is called number 29. I have a few in the book that are titled number, and then there are various numbers, and that's because I love art. And I feel sometimes like I'm just painting a painting with words. These are word paintings sometimes. And when I feel that it's a word painting, I number them with random numbers. This is number 29, opaque pastel on crepe paper. Her hustle beneath headphones and a Johnny Deuce. No rain, no wet. The bone shiv of winter waits in the cracked lips of clouds. Meantime, 13 cans is a free lunch. No dog is dogging today. Lombard is the slot machine. This one is called Day 50. She tucks her slink beneath the rickety socket. Inside these bones of horns, birds. She crawls into dreams past the man who stole the fallen star for a $20 bag. And I'll end on this one. This one is called Streets of Gods. And this is for a good friend of mine who is on his way into housing. Yes, Streets of Gods. Butchie, that is my friend's name. Butchie felts a wide-brimmed hat, been scorching fire air for weeks. The rope of fragile branches sway inside his faded jeans. He got a new red striped shirt. I see him cross the lot. He bends like a water bird reaching into the trash. One arm points to God for balance, the other to the circus. He's looking good, handsome, angular. He's a good-looking man. Loosely bound, the curve of his gray. A ponytail rides his spine, so Castro today. A stub of a cigarette smokes curls around his worn bulbs. A bronzed god. His thick nails carry earth like hide. The street tan, he is poetry. Where you been? He drawls. Leans into the car's half-cracked window. Hey, I thought that was you. Here and there, you know, been on the farm. Yeah, you look good. Where you been hanging? You know, at the cut. Saw they swept everyone the other day. Yeah, we moved to the other side, you know, it's cool. Do you need anything? Yeah, nothing, really. I'm good. Smoke comes out his nostrils, his lips. He's on his horse, divine. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, everyone, for listening and for being here. How beautiful.
Mimi, thank you so much for writing a gorgeous, compassionate collection of poems. You know, we all know there's so much chatter in the news about the homeless issues across all the cities across America, and so many failed attempts at a solution. And there's such a not in my backyard attitude with everybody. And these poems just beautifully bring it back to that human perspective. The way you interweave the desperation with charity, with glimpses of beauty, really forces us to realize the complexity of the situation, and reminds us that these people are individuals and they need to each be heard, and they need individual solutions. And I can't thank you enough for writing and sharing these poems with us. And thank you for all your hard work to actually make a difference and help the houseless and to give them a voice. You are to be commended for all your hard work. And when you mentioned that Butchie is going to a house, I mean, tears came to my eyes, because I know how hard you work with these people to actually find them a home and find them a solution. So you are an angel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today, Shawn.
You bet. Let's have a giant round of applause for all of our readers today. And thank you to you, our audience, for joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. As poets and authors have been impacted by the pandemic, limiting reading venues across the country, it means the world to us that you joined us here on Zoom to celebrate their poetry. Our next show will be on Saturday, March 12th, featuring Vivian Popperell, author of Nest in the Heart, Anne Farley, author of Tell Her Yes, and Juan Pablo Mobili, author of Contraband. To keep up to date on upcoming shows, new releases, and submission opportunities, please subscribe to our newsletter by going to thepoetrybox.com, where you'll find a sign-up form at the bottom of each webpage. And by the way, I want to let everybody know that our annual chapbook contest is currently underway, and we are accepting submissions through the end of February. And you can find all the full details on our website. So thanks again for joining us today. Enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow. An early happy Valentine's Day to you all. We look forward to sharing more poetry with you next month on the Poetry Box Live. Okay, well, that was a great show. Thank you, everybody, for your time. and for joining us today. It was really quite a moving reading, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you all.